Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the DP World Tour Picks and Bets. I am Skylar Hoke here with Tom Jacobs. Tom, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it was a good weekend of golf. Not at this tournament, yeah, no, it was good. It was positive. I'm glad that Bubba Watson didn't win in Saudi because we sort of said that it was quite a big price for a regular season event, right? And it looked that way in the end. So big putt for Harold Varner there.
Yeah, judging by your Twitter, Bubba Watson did win in the fact when he went birdie eagle to finish. So
yeah, I felt like
gave a little juice there.
Yeah, a bit like a Tim Endicott there. I called it too early, but no, it was tough. You can't ever expect Harold Varner to make that putt, right? I don't think Harold Varner was expecting to make that putt. Whether that changed anything for him long term, I'm not sure. But no, it was good to see, and good couple of weeks, good couple of tournaments last week.
Yeah, I mean, excellent. I mean, that finish, I know there's a lot of big HP3 fans out there. So good for you guys and those on him and those who cheer for him. It was good for him to get over the line. Like you mentioned, the other tournament, which you had success on, you're running hotter than the sun right now, Tom Hoke, with a beautiful final three holes there to nip Jordan Spieth. But our bread and butter here, we saw Nicolai Højgaard just absolutely dominate the first round at El Hamra Golf Club. I mean, his off the tee excellence was unbelievable. And I mean, we barely mentioned him and Rasmus last week. We kind of you can loop them together in some sense, but you also can. It's almost like every single week. It's almost these kids just don't have consistency, which probably gives them bigger numbers than they should, but it doesn't like give you confidence to back them. It just has to be almost something blind that they can turn into a certain number from here on out. It's just like, okay, they could do it. Because Nicolai didn't show the form, in my opinion.
No, it's one of those ones, right? And it comes back to that stupid saying that I have all the time that I'm just going to wait for them to be in a more loaded field. And this is an example of that not working out, right? Like I didn't really fancy the chances of either of them. I thought they were both fine. I probably would have lent Rasmus just because of the price anyway, because, as it stands, there's not too much between them. I think Nicolai will go on to have a better career, but yeah, I mean, look, it happened, didn't it? He's excellent off the tee. Had a bit of a wobble yesterday where it looked like Jordan Spieth might get in and win, who hold a lot more putts than I would have expected. So I was impressed by that. But he bounced back well, Nicolai, and he tore apart the course as he can.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm a big Shotgun Start fan. You golf nuts out there listen to it, would be one of my favorite podcasts out there. And Andy Johnson made a great point, I thought, not putting in perspective really what Nicolai and Rasmus are doing. I mean, they're not even legal drinking age in the United States right now. They're not 21 years old, and they each have 3 wins on big tours. I mean, big events in the sense of, the second biggest tour in the world. And here they are, just starting to take off. If they were college sophomores winning events at this clip, like you would still even take probably more notice than what's happening right now. So excited for what's ahead for these guys. They're right at the top of the betting board. Nicolai, of course, is now the favorite this week. A number that is now cut in half from what it was. Rasmus is still kind of floating around that area. You and I differ quite a bit on our selections this week. Before we really dive in, I guess general consensus of guys that you're looking at, was there a specific strategy that you thought took these guys to the top? Because I have some strong takes there.
I effectively just went with guys that hit it well tee to green, off the tee mainly. I think just anyone that can take advantage of those par fours like Nicolai did, and all the par fives are gettable right. So I don't really care about putting, was basically the idea this week.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about before, Matt on Twitter at SGT to Green. If you're not following him and you listen to the show, make sure you do, because he's always posting live DP World Tour strokes gained stats. He scrapes some data, so you got some interesting things. Nicolai Højgaard had, I believe it was 33 drives last week that were over 330 yards. And the next closest was 18 in the entire field. You look at what he was in those 6 easiest holes, you went some of those par fours, he was 22 under. Next closest was 14 under. Took advantage with what it was. And it's pretty simple. I mean, him and Jordan Smith were 1-2 in strokes gained off the tee last week, 1-2 on the leaderboard. And even the other guys that were up there, Hao Tong Lee, he has a really good driver. Some of just the other guys, just if you look overall that were in the mix, Otagi, not really a driving guy. Tapio, when Tapio is in there, you have to be able to have some distance to your name. Dietrich, you see, Van Tonder, McIntyre, just guys that can really. Ross Fisher was up there. It has to be a driving week, and that was our speculation going into it because Challenge Tour results did depict this as well. So that's where I'm kind of planting my flag and really trying not to get too much recency bias, just seeing the event that what it was, because we've seen guys come off poor weeks and then win the next week at the same exact course. So I think there's just a lot up in the air, and prices have definitely differed.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, I think there's two sides to it. You can expect someone to improve on last week's result because they've had a look at it, and you can overvalue what they did last week and get too sucked in, right? So there's two of those both available. I don't think either of us have particularly done that. I think everything that we've kind of picked, just looking at your section as well briefly, suggests that we're picking up on the right things and not going too far into them. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with my card, if not a little bit pessimistic based on what happened last week.
Yeah, I feel okay about it. Again, I haven't been able to hit the board. I've been all over the place. So I'm hoping we can get a little life from my side because you've been carrying our weight. So start us off, Tom. Who's your first selection for the week?
So I got with JB Hansen, and he was kind of close for me last week, and I didn't go with him, and ultimately that played out being a good decision in the end. But I think he showed enough to me to actually perform. He performed well. He was 12th in his irons. He was inside the top 15 through 3 rounds. Had a pretty poor final round, obviously. But yeah, I was pretty happy with what he did, and I still think he's one of the better players in this field right at the moment. I think that he's capable of scoring on those par fives and those par fours. It was good enough, if not quite good enough to contend. And I think he could build on that. So at 40 and 45 to 1, I thought he was worth looking at.
Yeah, friend of the program, former winner for us. Never hate going back to the well there. Recent first round leader, I believe it was 2 events ago. So we know he could take it deep. I said everything I did about driving, how it's really all that matters to me in some way. And then my first selection at a low price doesn't really follow my MO. It is a golfer, probably, well, I guess I'm a little wrong. I was going to say probably the only one who is this short that didn't play last week at this course, but that is wrong because we do have Adri Arnaus that came over, who that would have hurt me big time if he would have won that event. I was shocked how he played. Of course, didn't come really through on Sunday, but man, in the wind on Saturday was excellent there. Friday afternoon, I think it was, when everyone else was kind of falling back to leaderboard, he kept charging up. Great on Adri Arnaus. It's tough to back him, even though he's a great driver of the golf ball at 25. However, I think the sneaky performance over there coming off of a strong week the week prior was Justin Harding. Justin Harding ended up finishing, I believe it was 24th last week in Saudi, but his weekend rounds of 66, 68 took notice for me. He was 4th the event before, the Dubai Desert Classic, 25th right before that. So like a strong stretch to open up his first couple weeks of the season. And his approach numbers at the Dubai Desert Classic were excellent. Gaining over, I would say, his best approach numbers probably pretty much almost a year for Harding there. So we don't really know what it was like at Saudi because we don't have the strokes gain data from there. But the other thing that gave me a little bit more confidence was the last win Harding had was at the Magic Kenya Open. And that's a course when I think of that ball striking is really needed. He's an excellent putter, has the range of putter, of excellent golfers, but he has done it at courses that demanded good ball striking. So at 35 to 1, I just love that form he has in him. So he's where I am starting my
I love Justin Harding literally all the time. Like, I think quite often I say to you that he looks a big price, and he just didn't this time. Like, I just didn't think he looked big, and only if it was the same price as JB Hansen, I probably would have had a decision to make. And I think that, as you mentioned, like it's not particularly his strong suit. That driving the ball isn't massive for him, right? But there's going to be different ways to get it done around here. Like it isn't just going to be like you say. It's he did it, and he definitely fits that mold. And we could get too carried away in that you just have to have bombers, and all of a sudden someone could just knock it around and make all the putts, and that happens. So I think anytime you can get Justin Harding in at 35 and 40 to 1 in a pretty limited field is fine with me.
Yeah, he's just. I almost feel like his finishes haven't reflected how well he has played, because he has made a strong presence on the top of the leaderboards. Most events he's played in at least at some point. But we live in this mid 50s to 70s range for our next few selections here. Again, since we differ so much, we're going to kind of run just back and forth on who we're bullish on. So, Tom, who's next for you?
Sean Norris for me, so another South African, which will lead into probably our next pick as well. But this is a guy that, has been incredible on the Japanese tour, right? He's a prolific winner on Japanese and Asian tour. Long in the tooth. It's not like he's new. He's been around for a long time, but it feels a little bit different over the last couple of years. It feels like he's kind of ready to win at this level, and at this level, it kind of felt like he could contend in a Dubai Desert Classic or an Abu Dhabi. So to go and win this wouldn't be that surprising to me at all. Tied ninth last week, just really, really solid. Every round, 68, and then 69 on the final day. Obviously not good enough to keep pace with, Hogard, but he was only 2 behind Ategi, Lee and Pavon and Mehmet in third. It was just Hogard just went to another level. And if he can't replicate that, then I think that kind of like Jordan Smith's score was probably the more fair target. Then I'd certainly think Norris can get there. He was 16th off the tee last week, 26th in approach. And I just want a guy that wins, right? He wins a lot. And yes, it's at a different level. And I think we found out kind of like Ju Young Kim last week that like just form on the Asian and Japanese tour maybe doesn't always translate, but he has shown it at a pretty consistent clip on the European tour in recent years. Yeah,
he's that whole mold of these golfers that we get that come off of the sub tours that get their starts. And another one here now, he's secured his card after his victory at the second stage of the Kenya events last year. Daniel Van Tonder finds his way back onto my betting card. And it's interesting because I like Van Tonder a lot, because I do view him as like a big driver of the golf ball. And at times his statistics just don't line up for it. I mean, last week, 13th place finish with truthfully one of his worst outputs off the tee in a good amount of time. And it does give me a little bit of nerves. His number is now half of what it was last week. And I still think there's just enough there when he is a golfer that can rip off 6 missed cuts in a row and then come with a win, in his next couple of events. He just has that ability to bounce back. And when he drives the ball the best, it is long. It is, okayly straight. I mean, again, I bring back that his PGA Championship numbers against the best golfers in the world. He literally was one of the top tee to green at Kiowa. So I just think Sunday, he led the field in strokes gained approach. His around the green game saved him all last week. That's why he finished 13th. But I think we know peak Van Tonder, and that's still enough in this field, given him seeing this course. So for 4 more rounds, I can give it another shot here.
I think the way you got to view it, right, is, well, you don't have to view it this way, but I think the way you could view it is that he finished 13th when basically terrible off the tee, and only until the last round was he not very good with his irons. So that was kind of like the floor performance at this golf course for him, if you look at it that way, and that we know what could happen if he actually gets going with the off the tee. I mean, I hate watching him hit driver, but he seems to make it work, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, he's maybe it's a narrative without having enough on him that's created, but I just think there's a lot in the tank from a winning upside, from what he's clearly done at some of the lower tours, and then of course came through last year in Kenya. I have a second one here at the same price. I mean, $100 was 55. Also is Callum Shinkwin. If you stretch out statistics on the DP World Tour, I dare say the best golfer off the tee in this field is Callum Shinkwin. When you look at basically any type of like 50 rounds or more data with a good amount of sample size, I mean, it's him, Jordan Smith, Laurie Cantor, Nikolai Højgaard, Romain Langasque. I mean, all golfers that are 30-1 and lower in this field. And I mean, you look at outside of, Shinkwin just has the longer odds because he's so volatile versus some of the other guys, in my opinion. And maybe that's something we want to continue to attack. I mean, that is why Nikolai Højgaard can still be 30-1 and win at a number that we look back at and shake our head, because he does miss cuts. I mean, Shinkwin does miss cuts, but what does he do? He gains strokes off the tee in almost every single event. I think we're looking at double digits in a row now for him. I guess he slightly lost off the tee the last Dubai event, but ball striking, he was excellent last week as well. So I think that carries over. Again, he finished 21st. So just a good amount of just things going in here. And people that I trust backed him last week too, that found a lot in there. So I'm hoping they go back to the well at a very similar price. But I just think there's enough, seeing what he did last week, knowing his build, to keep it going. And he won. Or no, he didn't win. They had the back-to-back Cyprus events. He won the first one, didn't he? But he did contend in the second one. Not that literally matters, playing a course 8 rounds in a row and using other ones, but it happens to be a string of things with the first 3 guys that have bet.
I think, we spoke about Shinkwin earlier in the year, didn't we? An event already. I can't remember where it was now. It might have been Abu Dhabi. And I just view him as that kind of 100-1 golfer, and when I see him at 55-1, and like, he's always decent off the tee, and he's always pretty miserable on the greens. And even though that's a slight improvement on what he was before his victory, which always held him back, he's kind of, when everyone goes like he gets to 0, he doesn't get to 0, but he gets closer to it, and it's enough. I just worry about him making enough putts to go low enough. I think he can definitely set him up with enough opportunities, but at 55-1, I wanted someone that could do that more regularly. But he has the skill set of what we're looking for, is what I would say.
Yep, absolutely. Let's flip it back to you as we go into long shot season for us.
Yeah, I mean, just before we move on, there was a couple of guys that I kind of looked at. I mean, Pablo Larrazábal's form has been unbelievable. Like, this run that he's on of consistency is unheard of for Larrazábal. And every time I go to the well with Larrazábal, it goes badly, which is why I've just gone, it's probably not going to work out for me at 45-50-1. And Marcus Armitage, again, keeps striking the ball incredibly well. So that would sting the second week in a row, but he was disappointing over the weekend. So I am going to leave it. But
I do think Pablo, I mean, if you look at some of those Saudi results, his 6th place finish, it would have been so nice to see some strokes gained out of what these guys were versus some of the better golfers in the world. But yeah, I mean, that's a strong finish out of Pablo there.
Yeah, and it just seems to be, it's probably a narrative thing, but whenever Larrazábal does well and you expect him to go well again, he doesn't. And that's just kind of in the back of my mind all the time.
I've got a good Pablo bet for you at the end of this.
Okay, cool. Ross Fisher, right, is a golfer that I'd pretty much given up on. At one point, I thought it was over. Like, whenever these Middle Eastern swings came around, he always seemed to pop up. But he was 9th in strokes going tee to green last week, 10th in approach, 9th and 5th the last 2 weeks off the tee. So he is striking the ball incredibly well. Can he make the amount of putts you need is the question. Can he even set up the same amount of opportunities as a Nikolai Højgaard? But the trouble is if we base everything on can they do what Nikolai Højgaard done last week, you won't back anyone, because no one will do what he done. Like, he dropped however many shots he drops and still shot 22 under par. Like, it was just ridiculous. Just made eagles at a clip that people should be making eagles. Ross Fisher had 267 rounds, shot 72 on Saturday that kind of took him out of it, and wasn't the fastest of starters. But I just think a bit of acclimatization over there for the second week. If his game is what it looks like on paper, then I think we could be in for a big Ross Fisher week.
Yeah, he's someone I can never really nail, but this area of the world plus the needed ball striking is like a really good combination. We saw it obviously, of course, last week for him too. He'll probably be a great DraftKings play too. Salaries aren't out at this time we're recording, but absolutely think Fisher in this neck of the woods would make sense. I'm going to bring it back to that first statistic that we mentioned with Matt on the drives over 330 yards it was. And there was a golfer who was second on this list who had a pair of really good rounds last week. And he's good friends with the Hoygaard brothers. And he's now getting a chance to really kind of hit the ground running with some status. But it's Nicholas Moeller. If you don't include what his middle name, which is Nicholas Norgard Moeller. Yeah. So he is extremely long. I mean, I believe it was 18 drives over 330 yards last week for him. And I mean, for I guess the upside we've seen on him, he was 8th, I believe, at the Maiden Himmerland. It was last year where Byrne kind of ran away, but that's a good kind of challenge for those local guys there, getting a big step up. So that was really the first we had kind of seen of him outside of getting his tour card then, so last week would have been his first DP World Tour start, then 64th for him. But if you look at those sandwich rounds in the middle, 67, 68, absolutely fell apart on Sunday, shot a 79. I just think if I'm going of the mold of upside and it's really coming from the driving perspective of it, I think his talent is just a little bit more than some other guys in this range for this course specifically. So that's kind of where I almost went with Yannick Paul for another week, because Yannick, now that we're getting some more numbers on him, he is also extremely long too. I think he has a driving weapon, ball striking weapon overall. But I just think the upside for Norgard Moeller might be a little bit more. So that is where, for me, I'm going to be here.
So last week I sort of said to me, and I think you kind of agreed this was a good time just to target the Challenge Tour guys, and we kind of went with Bruin and I went with LaCroix. And Norgard Muller was definitely part of that thinking. Like, he was, not just because he was one of them, but because, like you say, he'd had that sort of flash appearance at the Maiden Himmerland, which was, really nice to see. He was 8th there, 4th for the Czech Challenge the week after, so you knew you could have kept up good form. It just worried me how poor he was on the final day, and it can be forgiven. Like, he's young, looks young, is young, but I guess, do you chuck that out the window when he's got two friends that are really young that are what they are in the world? It's really hard how you view it. Like I say, it's really horrible to compare them to people that are doing things that can't be sustained. So it's definitely worth another look at the price that he is, because you're not paying a lot to find out, right?
Yeah, and he's a really good putter from kind of looking at those couple events where he actually had kind of these flash finishes. He's just, anytime we've recorded him from a strokes gain perspective, his driving distance versus the field is just extremely overweight. So he'd be my. I'm gonna go. You go next, Tom, because I think after I dug in, I might end up being on Yannick too.
I don't know what to do with David Law, because I thought he was going to be so short in the market that it wouldn't matter and I wouldn't have a decision to make. But he was 175 to 1 last week. You could argue should have won the golf tournament, and he's still 100 to 125 to 1 in a place. And to me, he was so, obviously he was disappointed, right? But he seemed so upbeat about what he'd done. And I don't know if that's a lying to himself to cover up the fact that he's actually disappointed with what he'd done, which he probably should be, right?
or whether that is a genuine thing. And if it's a genuine thing that he was, really content with what happened, then I think that's pretty impressive. And I just thought the price was slightly too big to find out whether he can do it again.
Yeah. I mean, what you would have early Sunday morning thought, neck and neck of what it could have been. And those numbers normally get slashed significantly more. As I made the argument, go.
Even with how bad he was on Sunday, like he was fifth in approach. And the trouble is with him is like he's what we've said about Harding and others. He's not going to be the guy that just drives it and just gains that way. Like he does have to have a really good game, and he did that for 3 rounds and didn't for 4. But even like when he was playing badly, he was in it for a long time, right up until the back 9 when Nikolai took over. And even Nikolai had his wobbles. So I think there's scope for bad performances, especially under pressure that he was under. And I think I can probably forgive it just based on the price.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very fair argument.
Back to your point.
No, yeah, I'm just re-racking my notes and kind of looking through the numbers in this range. And I think when I was forced to make a decision here, I think in the early hundreds, kind of looking at it from here, Kruwich Yachts is somebody who, what different pronunciations of that? That was wild.
Mine's probably wrong.
Mine can't be right either. So, but he's on a couple of betting cards that we respect and kind of have shown some life after knocking off a little rust on Thursday. If you also look at Marcus
Lekilda,
missed a cut, but has.
That's not what I said.
I'm gonna repeat whatever you say. Marcus Hellingkadil. Hellingkadil. Marcus, but he's also bet by guys that Brad Todd's on him. And Bradley Todd is literally the best better in the world. There's no doubt about it.
Just listen to him. No
I'm lost for words. Yeah. So Bradley's been phenomenal. He's on him, but I just end up going back to as I look through the notes. I do think there's enough in Yannick to just repeat my same process on why I liked him last week. His ball striking was still just fine. And that's what he is. His game does have in it is what we're seeing, the distance, we're seeing approach, and again, it's we don't have a ton of him because we literally only have 2 strokes or 2 events of strokes gained data, but I think there's enough to know if these guys can drive the ball, at least, because if you're driving with distance and gaining off the tee, you have that in your bag. So I think Yannick, if I'm going to talk myself to Nordgaard Moeller, I think I don't want to leave off Yannick. So he will be on my betting card. And then to put the final stamp of approval. Did you see, we're talking off the tee, Tom. We're talking guys that played the weekend at the course, last week. There was a golfer out of Italy. He might have found it a little bit. You woke up there, he was 200.
Let me tell you. Was it Eduardo Molinari? Oh, no.
200. No. Younger here. 2 under through his first 2 holes on Thursday. If I would have been awake at midnight, I wasn't sleeping, So he finished 20th in strokes gained off the tee. If you want to talk about stats that matter, that's it right there. Guido Migliozzi played the weekend. Have you noticed he's rocking those specs on the golf course? He has the Haotong specs on. Now we're seeing Haotong Lee at 30-1 these days. It can't be that long then if Guido's wearing these similar ones that he's back there contending, cashing each ways. So 130-1, yeah, I like that.
Wasn't this like when Jameis Winston got LASIK surgery and everyone thought he was going to stop throwing interceptions? It's just he's still going to miss greens and fairways, and I don't know. It's a hell of a drug, Migliozzi. If you ask for that on the street, it'll be expensive. I thought you might like Christopher Broberg, and I can see why, because his off the tee game wasn't good enough. And I think if you finish 4th in approach and finish 42nd in the leaderboard, that means that you haven't got the suited game. So I was, in the end, quite easy to oppose him.
Yeah, his irons continue to be, excellent. I thought also, I almost went, I didn't want to fall into the recency bias of that, but Lucas Nemec is his Nemec. He's got a lot. Like I dug through a little bit of the data of it. He's known to be very long. So like it racks up with the same narrative. I mean, he finishes third out of nowhere and shows that he has driving distance of it. Oliver Becker, similar situation. He's decent with the driver as well. You know, finished second to an event that Van Tonder won. You know, also just right in that area. I thought he was decent. But we're starting to get some of these like names of guys that are just like even long in these events. I mean, you're seeing Juiced down here in the 100. You know, you're seeing Will Besling down here at 140. It's just that the times are changing a little bit, and we're going to have a month off after this event, or 3 weeks off. So it'll be interesting because we just don't hit a stretch of form for guys to be able to build our narrative sometimes.
And that's the thing, is like we're trying to build an idea around golfers over this winter break where they've had some time off. We're just starting to get some data on them, and then all of a sudden they're going to have a massive break again. So that is a slight concern. And talking of breaks, Oliver Wilson came back after a break last week. And I sort of talked him up on the podcast and mentioned that I'd be interested and wanted to see more of what he was doing. I messaged him on Tuesday or Wednesday, I think it was, just asked how he felt. And he basically said jet lagged. So I kind of knew that it was going to be a slow start, or anticipated a slow start. And it was. He was like 360 off the tee at one point. He posted it on his Instagram. He said, I couldn't not post this. I don't know how many measured holes that was, probably 2. And he probably, hit a cart path or something. But he's sneakily long again now. Like he has chased that a little bit over the off season. I sort of said to you that I was interested, because he keeps posting on socials, whether, as I said, it was a stupid narrative, but I can't see someone posting that much on social media if they're going to be crap. And he wasn't, right? He was really good tee to green, 14th off the tee. He finished 27th after an opening round 73. So at 201 or 175 or whatever he's going to be this week, I'm going to find out how Oliver Wilson does this week.
You say that I have a Guido problem.
Yeah.
I think eventually we're going to address your Oliver Wilson problem.
We're going to have to.
You make a statement in there every time we run through the sixes. Ollie Wilson, this might be the week. This could be it.
I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get you to interview Guido as well, because then you can have some sort of affinity to him.
Yes.
Because this is the only reason I back Oliver Wilson, because I spoke to him once and he's a nice guy. And he supports Nottingham Forest, who I support as well. So that's why I like Lee Westwood. That's why I like Oliver Wilson. But no, there are some numbers to it. And he always just seems to be a decent price.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I wrap up our cards here, I said I had one more bet for you this week. So tomorrow, yes. I believe it's tomorrow. Odds are still up. What's today? It's 7th. Yeah. So Short Life, if you're listening to this Monday night and your books are offering it, there's a 9-hole exhibition happening on the DP World Tour called the Hero Challenge.
I know where we go with this
Pablo Larrazabal is playing with, or Pablo Larrazabal. Nope, Larrazabal. Pablo Larrazabal.
Oh, fine. Yeah.
Okay. Is playing with Guido Migliozzi. They're teaming up.
Win, right?
9 holes. Anything can happen in 9 holes. These guys are 16-1. Why don't you parlay that with Guido? Next thing you know, we'll be at these events pretty soon, hosting it live. So no, I think that the other one that caught my eye actually is after Haotong Li and Nemec played together last week. They're paired up 18-1, 9 holes. Maybe they're feeling kind of hot. But yeah, I'm definitely putting a little chunk of change there on Pablo and Guido together.
Great time to back Ollie Wilson again. He's playing with Richard Bland. That'd be like the seniors group.
Here we go.
Outsiders at 22-1. I can't get that degenerate. I think that's kind of painful. A 2-man 9-hole event. It gave you another reason to back Guido, right?
Yep. And if we hit it, put that in the books. It's a win. So, all right, Let's wrap up these betting cards. Tom, you go first.
Yeah, so it's JB Hansen for me, I think 40-1, 45-1. Sean Norris at 50-1. Ross Fisher at 100-1. David Law at 125-1. And Oliver Wilson at 175 or 200-1, whatever you can get.
Perfect. I'm on Justin Harding, 35-1. Callum Shinkwin, 55. Daniel Van Tonder, 55. I am going with Yannick Paul at 125. Nicholas Norgard Moeller at 130. And Guido, he's as long as 140 here in the States. And then again, if you got that Pablo Guido, 18-1 over in the Hero Challenge, going to be on that there. If you enjoy the podcast, we'd appreciate you guys like, review, subscribe. If you want to have the audio version, you can always download Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets the Mix. Find us there every single week as well. We will for every single event. You won't be seeing us for a couple of weeks as the DP World Tour is off. We'll be catching you guys once it is back. Tom, thank you for another great episode.
Well, thank you, buddy. And I really hope it's a Guido win soon, because I want you to get back in the winner's circle, and I want it to be that way.
Amen.
So let's do it.
Yes. Amen to that. Thanks, everybody.